This is that Twilighty show about that zone.
You could just, you don't have to.
Do I have to? I don't have to. Well, you said start us off. I don't remember how you started us off.
I'd say, hey, what's up? How you doing? We're holding mics today, and we're in Studio 7, I want to say.
Yeah, this is weird.
We're in the old living room.
If you're going to criticize how I do it, then don't make me start. I mean.
All right, fine. Whatever. Yeah, what are we talking about?
Talking about that Twilighty show about that zone.
All right, but what specifically?
We're talking about, oh, you mean the episode? Well, I know it's got the word devil and printer in it. So this episode is called The Devil's Printer. Is that right?
No, that's not right at all. It's called Printer's Devil, starring Burgess Meredith and a couple of other people.
I swear I did watch the episode. I did my research.
Yeah, I know. That's devil in it.
It's got devil.
It's the devil that prints.
If you think about it, the devil's printer makes a lot more sense than the printer's devil.
This is the last episode in the first half of this season that we're going to be covering before we go on hiatus. One of my favorites. I really enjoyed this episode, mainly for Burgess Meredith. Everybody else is a drag in this. His character is the only one that has any life in it, so to speak.
Well, I mean, Burgess Meredith is kind of like what you think of almost when you think of the Twilight Zone. He's been in some of the iconic episodes. How are you going to compete with Burgess Meredith?
He's synonymous with the Twilight Zone, and when the movie came out in 1983, he was the voice that introduced all of the episodes in the movie.
There you go.
And he also does the famous intro and outro for that. But we're in Danbury, which I believe is in Connecticut.
Danbury is in Connecticut, but I think the name of the town is something slightly off from that. It was like, and now I wish I had looked it up, but it's like Dansbury. It's like slightly different.
Oh, really? I didn't catch on to that.
Yeah.
But we have a owner of a newspaper, a troubled owner who's facing severe financial problems. They're running out of money. No one's buying their paper, which I don't understand because it seems to be a major town, and you shouldn't have one major town with one newspaper.
Yeah, that's true. You wouldn't get a very...
It's antithetical to the idea of free speech and differing points of view.
Right. And yeah, isn't that kind of interesting, though, talking about this in 2019, considering newspapers are in financial trouble today because
they're in financial trouble, yes.
The internet?
It's because of the internet. In this story, it is mainly that, I guess, his competition is a major conglomerate. So they have complete
resources he doesn't have.
Yeah. And they can, and his line of type operator, the old man, leaves the job. He quits the job because they're not making any money. He's been offered a position at the bigger paper, and he says they can afford to lose all kinds of money and not feel it.
And they can probably pay him and give him benefits and do things.
All kinds of stuff like that. Whenever it involves competition. But this guy, I don't quite get his deal because he does have a newspaper, but he's got what is called a printer's devil, that his main copying machine. So it's not like you're running it off the presses or anything like that. A linotype instrument is very interesting. It's a typewriter / printer all in one thing because it makes out these metal plates that have letters on them so that you can constantly print. It runs kind of like its own little miniature printing press, but you have to kind of stamp everything to get the words on the paper.
So if you make a typo,
you're
in trouble.
That's why a linotype operators, the ability is to not make typos because those typos cost money. He's down on his luck. He's got his girlfriend there. And we're not really sure what this woman does.
She has a desk there. You kept saying she's just his girlfriend. I'm sure she worked there. I don't know if she's a reporter or the secretary.
I suspect that she was a writer. Regan kept saying she was a secretary. It's like, that's not a good idea to have your secretary there who's also your girlfriend.
Or maybe she started working there and then they got involved.
Or maybe they went to college together. Who knows?
Right. They don't tell us, and I guess it doesn't matter.
We don't get that impression, except that she's a royal pain in the ass because this guy is
annoyed you. Yeah,
she's really down on his luck. He just lost his linotype operator. She's yelling at him instead of doing what a girlfriend should do, which is try to comfort him, try to come up with solutions. Instead, she is just the source of his problems. And we had this discussion before. We were talking about Jess Bell And that's why I say Jezebel is kind of a feminist story, because that woman in Printer's Devil is behaving the way women behaved in the early 60s in television.
I don't know about that. I'm not going to go down the Jezebel rabbit hole with you again. But the thing is, with this woman, I can sort of see, I mean, the reason why she's reacting the way she is because she's worried about him. She's just not reacting the way you think that she should. All of her
I know
anger
if it were you,
wants
you
him
would
to
be coming up with solutions to my problems. You'd be trying to, you'd give me a back rub, or something like that. Or I would do the same for you. If you were in that position, I would be there to try and support you, not to make you angry, not to antagonize you.
Yeah, long story. Yeah, I get it. She's
My God, this cat is making a lot of noise with this dish.
Yeah, is this getting picked up on the mic?
Probably. He does that a lot. That's little. He's got a big long tongue, and he just goes on.
Anyway, yeah, she's a bit shrill. She's a bit of a harpy. I see what you're saying.
You don't know how bad things are going to be for this guy until he decides he's going to drive out to a bridge above a river, and he's contemplating suicide. And that's when our friend Mr. Meredith makes his first appearance.
Young man, might I trouble you for a match?
Yeah, sure.
It's a lovely night, isn't it? Lovely spot, too. Smell the pines. It's a pity you have to leave it all.
What do you mean?
Well, you were about to commit suicide, weren't you?
That's none of your business.
I agree. If a man wants to do away with himself, I say that's his decision, nobody else's. But I do think you ought to make a good job of it.
So what happens there?
Didn't you watch it? Sorry.
We're doing the John Davidson show.
Oh, I see. Yeah, so I'm guessing this is some kind of, since he's supposed to be the devil, am I giving something away? This must be his thing. He waits for people who are really despondent and about to kill themselves, and then he kind of walks up and pretends.
We don't know that he's the devil until maybe.
This is just a random chance meeting.
Half
So I
an
think
hour
he
into
asks him for a light or something.
Yeah.
Does he ask him for a light? And then
He's got these weird crooked cigars.
They get to talking a little bit. Burgess Meredith, because apparently we can't remember the character's name, is wise to the fact that
Mr. Smith.
Mr. Smith. Oh yeah, okay. Is wise to the fact that he's about to commit suicide, and then he says, "Well, if you're not going to do that, can you give me a ride back into town?"
Yeah.
And then they end up going out for drinks, and
he can't pay the bill.
his
the
tab.
newspaper
He has
guy
a tab.
He can't pay his tab, so
Bar and Grill or
Burgess
whatever.
Meredith hands him a stack of cash, and he's like, keep the martinis flowing.
Oh, and he also sexually harasses the waitress. Let's not forget
does
about
he?
that part.
No, he
Kinda, 'cause
leers.
He keeps trying to poke her with his cane, and I'm like, what is he? What exactly are his intentions with that cane?
He's he's leering at it. This is something that you don't really see with Burgess Meredith. He usually plays okay.
He's usually not sexual in any way.
No, he's not. It's like he made a couple of appearances on Twilight Zone before. He made Time Enough at Last, which is a classic, the one about the guy who survives the nuclear blast and then breaks his glasses. He was in The Obsolete Man. He was in Mr. Dingle. And he's playing these timid characters. He's playing timid, wouldn't harm a fly type guys. But he goes full on into this. I mean, he just totally jumps into this part. He's a lecherous old man. He's wicked. He's evil, and you totally believe it too, because there's something about he has a quality.
He has a quality. He has a quality
where he can play anything. You tell Burgess to be timid, he'll be timid for you. Tell him to be evil. He'll be evil for you. He's a great actor. I've always loved him.
He is, and none of these things, even from character to character, he still is himself. None of these different things are very over the top or overt. He's always really subtle. For some reason, I always think about him. I think the first time I noticed him or thought about him was seeing him in the Rocky movies, right? And he was already
Mickey.
In the Rocky movies. He was already an older man by then.
Sly's trainer, and he was great in it, and he got an Oscar nomination, I believe, for that. He's like a guy you wouldn't never expect to be a boxer. I mean, most trainers were boxers. He's a small little man, and I remember talking to Mark Jacome about this because we did the Mr. Dingle the Strong episode, and we looked at old pictures of Burgess Meredith when he was a young man, and he looked like that. He still looked the way he did, just less wrinkles.
Do you remember when we were watching one of the Twilight Zone episodes, and Burgess Meredith, he kind of looks old. Even then, I just looked at you and I said, "Was Burgess Meredith ever young?"
But he was.
Oh,
he was young.
obviously.
It's just that he had that face. He has kind of an impish face about him.
Yeah.
Youthful in a way, but impish.
I kind of like to see Of Mice and Men. I've never seen. I'm very familiar with the book.
He
and
was in
everything,
that
but-
with Lon Chaney.
Yeah, Junior, Lon Chaney Jr. I'd
Lon
really
Chaney
like
Jr.
to see that at some point. I'm just curious to see him when
Lon
he was
Chaney
younger.
Jr. played Lenny, and I guess
and Burgess Meredith played George, right?
George. So he was the shrewd one.
Right, he's the smart one, yeah.
And then also Burgess Meredith, of course, is the Penguin in the Batman movies.
Right.
In
This
the
would've
Batman TV show, rather. The original TV show with the wah, 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 wah. And sort of he created that characterization that was sort of built on top of by Danny DeVito in the movie. Not really as much by Robin Lord Taylor in Gotham. Robin Lord Taylor is doing something different in the Gotham
It's definitely
TV show.
a different interpretation.
A fine actor, but he gets the waddle down though. That's what I felt was homage to Burgess Meredith, was that Robin Lord Taylor does a kind of waddle when he walks in the Gotham TV show.
You can't see him, but he just demonstrated it.
I
with his upper
demonstrated a
body.
waddle there, and also for some reason, inexplicably, in toward the end of a Monkeys episode, he's dressed up kind of like the Penguin. He goes, wah, but he's not really the Penguin because Columbia Pictures Screen Gems did not own the copyright.
Copyright issues.
So it's kind of like a look-alike Penguin character. What episode was that?
That was
that Some Like It Lukewarm?
Some Like It Lukewarm. Yeah, very good. You remember that, and I don't.
I remember it was Some Like It Something or other, and it was an episode that did not have
oh wait,
a resolution.
it wasn't. No. Sorry, it was Monkeys Blow Their Minds.
Monkeys Blow Their Minds. Was that another episode that didn't have a third act?
Yes.
Okay. I don't know what they were thinking of when they were writing the show. Millions of dollars on the line.
They just stuck random things in there just to fill time. Anyway, back to the show.
Back to the show.
Back to the topic.
He gets. He tells the newspaper man that he is a linotype operator and a reporter, and that if he hires him, he will turn his business around or something like that. He kind of sells himself really well, so he goes.
And he pays off all their debts.
He pays off all their debts, gives them $5,000 in cash he just happened to have in his wallet.
Very good, Mr. Smith. Let's see how long it takes you to copy this lead story. Right over there.
Shouldn't he?
Who is he, anyway?
I don't know.
Well, it's not the latest model, but it's a good one. Now. Listen to it hum. Kindly hold that cigar for me. Keep it burning.
But if he doesn't play Chopin's Polonaise, I'll be disappointed.
May I have my cigar back?
Oh, yes.
Put it in my mouth, please. I may have to make a few modifications, but on the whole, it's in fine condition. A little stiff, perhaps.
What's the matter?
Matter?
Why did you quit?
Finished.
That's impossible.
See for yourself.
Little man who looks like he could be, mugged very quickly, somehow has $5,000.
I don't know. Not really. Not the way Burgess Meredith plays that character. I don't see anyone mugging him. It's just something about him.
He gets there. The girlfriend has been calling all the emergency rooms in the town or whatever, convinced that, I don't know, her boyfriend is going to kill himself or has offed himself in some way. They come back. He goes to the printer's devil, and he starts typing up something right away, very quick. He's very fast, no errors, no anything like that. And they, after seeing that their bills are going to be paid off and everything, they hire him. He hires them on the spot, and off we go. We go into what? What happens next?
It's basically just various situations where he has all these scoops. He has all these stories of spectacular news stories that are happening around town. They don't know how he's getting them so fast, and they're kind of suspicious. They sort of like call to verify, but it turns out to be everything he says is happening, and the paper starts doing well, and they start doing better than the big paper.
The first story was that the First National Bank robbed in broad daylight.
Right.
Just happened. And he has the information right there. But it gets to be suspicious, I think, when they start selling they
start outselling the
major paper.
The other paper.
And then their guy comes in, the owner of that paper, and he's like, I'm going to buy you out because that's what you do, right? When there's competition, you buy it out. And he leaves, and then suddenly that building is set on fire or something. And there's a fire.
Right,
and he reports the fire right away.
So at this point, the girlfriend and the paper owner there. They get suspicious that somehow he's not.
It's the
just
girlfriend mainly. I mean, like she's the one
reporting
there
the news
to bust everybody's balls. The newspaper guy doesn't really see a problem because he's too busy counting his money.
I suppose, but that was one thing that made me wonder. But I'll get back to that in a second. They start to think that maybe Mr. Smith is not just reporting the news with impossible speed, but he's also somehow creating the news, sort of accusing him of actually starting the fire, then reporting on it, and then...
Because he made quote-unquote modifications to the printer's devil.
Right.
Which is, I brought this up before, not Twilight Zone, Friday the 13th, the series. It reminds me of a cursed object from that show. A cursed object has a lot of power, and it gives you the ability to make it work, provided you kill someone. Generally, that was the idea in Friday the 13th the series, is that you have to kill somebody to power the object. But here we have the devil creating the news based on what he writes into this printer's devil. So it's kind of a cursed object in its own way.
So the paper owner, I mean, what was he doing before Mr. Smith came along? We know he was failing. But, I mean, it seems like he opened up this paper because he wanted to do the reporting and the writing himself, since there was only those two people on staff plus the
it seems like
the machine.
Well, no,
the guy who was operating the machine. So now with
we're
Mr.
not
Smith
seeing
doing
the staff.
everything,
I assume that there are writers on this paper.
Okay. So we're just not seeing him. I thought now he's not doing anything because Mr. Smith is doing everything. How does that make him happy? How does that feed his passion for news?
Because if you notice, I mean, it's like drinking. He's drinking heavily.
He's still drinking.
His girlfriend is
happy.
unhappy, and you got to keep the woman happy. As they say, happy wife, happy life.
Well, they were. I mean, they do. They do a little canoodling during this time when the paper's doing bad, or they sit on the couch and they're canoodling.
Oh, and they have sandwiches in a nice restaurant.
Right. That's the height that shows you that you're successful.
You've made it when you can have a
sandwiches.
sandwich in a nice restaurant.
Right. Okay.
And he salts and peppers his sandwich, which I don't understand. Why would you put salt and pepper in your sandwich?
It's the 60s.
There's a lot of smoking. I mean, like, he can't find a decent lighter or something. His lighter doesn't work. She lights a cigarette for him. That's what you did back in the early 60s. You lit your cigarettes for people when you wanted them to know that. She reminds me of, like, my mother had a hairdo like that. It was just like this Mary Tyler Moore crap. There's no getting your fingers through her hair.
It is sort of like Friday the 13th, except there's usually in those episodes, there's some kind of sympathy for the character, most of the time, who's got the cursed object, because whatever it is that they're doing with that object, it's filling some deep inner need that they have and that they can't fill. But
you're wondering about
Zone,
his motivation.
The newspaper owner. In this case, the devil is running his own machine, so that
something
element
that you would want, though? I mean, like,
of conflict is missing here.
The element of want here is that he probably came out of college, he studied journalism. Maybe he comes from a long line of people who were into writing and journalism.
You're making this up.
No, I'm just trying to create a motivation for you because I studied journalism in high school. Journalism is not the same as regular writing. It's not like you're not, Samuel Clemens is not going to be a journalist. He's a creative writer. So there are people who report the facts. That's what it should be about. That's what journalism should be about. It's about something happened, and then you record it because you want other people to read the story or you want other people to know. And he starts this paper, and it's like a very mom-and-pop thing. It's a very small thing. That is what's most important to him, is getting the message out there, getting the news out there.
I don't know. Again, that you're making this up. They don't show us any of this, and I don't have that much sympathy for these characters.
I have to assume that if you're going to start a paper, that's what you want to do.
You're assuming, right? So getting back to the story, then, of course, because he's the devil, it's time to pay up, right?
Oh,
so he busts out the
contract. This is where he reveals himself. I think after the newspaper building, his competitor, that building was set on fire.
Right. Okay.
Either by faulty electrical wiring or something else. He gives him a contract. He says, he's written the contract out. I bequeath my soul in exchange for services provided by. And Burgess Meredith is so awesome in the scene. He is playing on...
He plays on a few different things. One thing he does...
The gentleman's superior intellect.
Right.
And assuming that there's no such thing as a devil.
So
there's
go
no
ahead
such
and
thing as
sign
soul.
it. It's harmless.
I'm just an eccentric old rich man.
I hereby guarantee, you understand, guarantee, that you will become the most successful newspaper editor in the world if you will affix your signature to this little document.
I, Douglas Winter, agree to relinquish my immortal soul to the bearer upon my death in exchange for his services. I...
What?
You're the devil.
Oh, Mr. Winter. As a sophisticated, intelligent 20th century man, you know that the devil does not exist. True? True. But you also know that the world is full of eccentric, rich old men. Crazy old men who do all kinds of things for crazy reasons. Now, why don't you think of me like that? Huh?
Sign this.
What's that line from The Usual Suspects?
The greatest trick the devil ever pulled was convincing the world he didn't exist. And like that, he's gone.
Right. So, and not only that, and then when he has some hesitation for signing the contract, he starts to sort of play on his masculinity, I guess. He sort of badgers him into it, like, "Come on, are you afraid? What are you, chicken? Sign it, sign it,
weird
sign it."
That you go there. I never
didn't
picked
see
up
that?
on
I
that. I
did.
didn't pick up on him trying to.
As you say, first he appeals to his intellect, but then when the guy actually balks at it, he's like, maybe this isn't such a good idea. Then he's kind of like, "Come on, are you afraid? What? Are you afraid?" Which I interpreted as playing on, like
Really?
daring, like schoolyard daring. "Come on, I dare you."
It's interesting. You pick up on that. You're a woman. I didn't pick up on that.
Oh, really?
These are just
All
the
right.
games men play with each other, I guess.
So what? So you just took it as natural?
We take it as that you are playing on someone else's inability to make a decision or do something important, based on whatever it had. I didn't really think of masculinity in that way.
Well, it doesn't have to be masculinity. Women can get.
But again,
into
the
that,
devil
too.
is
It's
kind of a lecherous soul.
Your ego, I guess. Whatever. Yeah.
And he's checking out the girls, and he's coming up against them. He's getting all Uncle Joe Biden on them, and touching their hair
my
and
God.
smelling them and all that stuff.
The point being, he signs it after he gets badgered, bullied, dared
He's
into it.
like, okay, all right. I kind of see where you're going with that because he's like, okay, fine, I'll sign it. There you go.
See, it means nothing to me. I don't believe in it. I'll sign it. Yeah.
So then what? More horrible things happen. Buildings collapse.
Yeah, and they're sick of him. I think they
And-
want the couple. They want him to go.
Well, no, it's actually the girlfriend at first, and this is my take on the feminine aspect of this. Is
Okay.
that the girl, his girlfriend there, is not so much distressed by the fact that the newspaper has enjoyed this incredible success of recent due to Mr. Smith's influence.
Mm-hmm.
I think her main impetus for her motivation is jealousy. She is sensing that this Mr. Smith is taking up all their time, hence taking up all their time together.
Really?
Yes, she plays more as a jealous lover than she does as anything else.
I didn't see that at all. I
Okay,
just
well,
thought
there you
again.
go. There's our differences, man and woman.
I thought it was just more of the same stuff from the beginning when the paper was failing. She's constantly afraid for their safety, for their security, and she senses that there's something not right about this guy.
But safety and
she's doing
security
it-
leads to what?
and she's
leads
doing
to
it in the
marriage.
most
It leads to children. It's all part of her package.
Yeah, but I still don't see her as being threatened by.
I see
The
what I
time
see
taken
is the devil and this woman fighting over possession of this man's soul.
Okay, you're probably that could well be that would be more dramatically interesting.
Could be written that way. Why not?
Sure.
It doesn't work for me though because I don't find her appealing at all. I really don't.
All right.
The thing is, most chicks I've known, and I say chicks, are usually cool. They're usually very cool. This one really wants to own her boyfriend, and she's obsessed with the idea of owning him. That's how I see it. The devil wants to own everybody. It's on his CV. He loves to own people. He loves to own souls.
So then what happens? Then
Then I believe what has happened is that he has decided to leave because he's provided Douglas there with some kind of a condition or
he's going. Well, basically, he says he's tired of them. He's got a lot of other people to see, or he's tired of Douglas. So he's going to.
But he has hit Douglas with some kind of an ultimatum that says that his girlfriend's going to die in a car crash.
Yeah, he's basically. I can't remember exactly how this technically works in this reality, but it's sort of like he says, it's your soul or your girlfriend's death. So if you want to take back your soul and rip up the contract,
That's
then
right, yeah.
your girlfriend's going to die by X time.
Yeah.
There's like he has like an hour and a half time limit.
Well, no, he says that his girlfriend. He writes an article in The Printer's Devil that says that his girlfriend sustains injuries from a car accident.
It's going
But
to
he-
happen, right?
But he doesn't specifically say that she dies in the article. So the article can be changed.
Right.
So he decides he's going to leave. He takes the girl along with him in the car. He's driving the car.
Yeah,
And then-
the devil meets up with her first, and he's driving her in the car because there's a scene where Douglas is trying to get to her first to stop her from getting in the car.
Yeah.
And he goes to her apartment, he knocks on the door, and he does what's the character? I can't remember.
Penny.
No, Penny is the character from Big Bang Theory, but what's her name? Because that's what the joke I was making is he knocks on the door and he's like, but it's no good. I can't remember her name.
I don't know. I just want to call her Patricia.
All right. Well, never mind. That's a busted reference.
But anyway, he knocks on the door and
It's like,
she's
whatever
not
her name
there.
is. Knock, knock, knock. Jessie. Knock,
This-
knock, knock. Jessie. Yeah.
Jessie.
I don't think that's her name. I just made that up.
But this is when he gets a brain, finally. He figures out, wait a minute, I can use his little cursed object there, the Printer's Devil, to write my own story. Mm-hmm. And so he manages to do that. He basically says that he's too dumb to understand the terms of the contract.
What? I don't remember that. I
He
just
says that
remember
the devil's contract is negated because he was not fully aware of the terms and the conditions of it.
he writes himself out of the contract. He writes himself out of the situation.
They still have the car accident, but she's okay.
But she's okay. He writes himself out of the dangerous situation for his girlfriend, and he writes himself out of, and I think he writes the machine, like sort of ends the power of the machine with this one last story, right?
Perhaps. I mean, if he's not going to use it, it's not going to be usable.
It's not
in
going to
that
use
way.
it. It's not going to be.
So the devil disappears. Burgess Meredith disappears out of the car. She's fine. Everybody's fine. And they decide that they're going to have the newspaper and they're going to try to
Do it legitimately.
do it legitimately without that Printer's Devil. Perhaps they'll bring in the press.
Yeah, that last part where he was, where Douglas there was typing up the story to make things how he wanted it, and this reminded me. I think Stephen King must have been influenced by this episode, maybe
Right.
for his short story called "Word Processor of the Gods."
Can you fill us in a little bit on that story?
I can try what I remember. So that story was about an author.
Was
who,
that from Skeleton Crew?
I don't remember.
Or was it
which, it was either
from
from Skeleton
Night
Crew
Shift?
or Night Shift. So it's about a writer who gets a gift of a word processor from his sister-in-law, who had actually been recently deceased, and he realizes when he's using it that things that he types on the word processor are coming true. So at first he's can't really believe it, but then he uses it to write a better life for himself, where he's married to his sister-in-law instead, and his former nephew who was abused is now with him and happy, and he basically rewrites life so that it's got a happier ending, and that's sort of like what they did with this story. So
But it ends up going to hell, doesn't it? I mean, it's a Stephen King story.
no, actually it starts out in hell. It starts out in a very hellish way because his brother was a terrible person, and he sort of abused and destroyed his own family life, and the writer himself has a terrible wife who he hates. So
Right.
he's already sort of in hell, and this is the opposite way I'd say that in the story he sort of writes himself back out of hell.
Clever. I think it was done for a Tales from the Dark Side episode. I'm not sure.
I think so, yeah.
Exit the infernal machine, and with it his satanic majesty Lucifer, Prince of Darkness, otherwise known as Mr. Smith. He's gone, but not for good. That wouldn't be like him. He's gone for bad, and he might be back with another ticket to the Twilight Zone.
Okay, so one of my favorite episodes from the fourth season. I love it, mainly for Burgess Meredith. I just think he's wonderful, no matter what he does. And also very dark. It was a very darkly funny episode. What did you think of it?
Yeah, Burgess Meredith was great. He was very entertaining as the devil. I don't know. I didn't feel it. I don't know why. I'm not having any, for some reason, didn't have
You've
a real
seen
strong emotional connection with any of this.
We've seen the devil a couple of times in Twilight Zone episodes. He appears in The Howling Man as, the horns and the hoofed feet and the cape and everything. And then we see him, he is like a man in a white suit who gives a criminal a chance at a really successful afterlife, but unfortunately he wins at everything. And then later we'll see him in the 4th season as Julie Newmar, appearing in of late, I think, of Cliffordville, which I think we'll be doing. We'll
I
be
remember
talking
that one.
about that one too. Great, just fun episode. Love it.
All right. Sorry, that's all I got.
That's all I got too, because this is the end of the episode, and I want to thank Bronwyn Knox again for joining me on this one. And we're taking a hiatus. We'll be back in September, I believe, where we'll be covering the second half of the 4th season. And again, thanks for listening. Good night.
Good night.